All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Thursday, October 24th, and you are listening to All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson, along with Jake Jimerson. We want to thank each and every single person who have been interacting with the show, liking, sharing, and subscribing, commenting. Our interactions and our engagement on our last few videos have never been higher. We're seeing some great numbers thanks to everybody listening and participating. We appreciate it. All we can ask is for more support, keep spreading the word, and we'll keep doing our thing. So we've got a jam-packed show for you today. Everybody, we are going to give you some Vanderbilt detailed scouting reports, and we're going to go down the list as to where we think Texas is going to match up well against Vanderbilt. But yeah, we'll give you a little Texas Vandy preview. Sark facing adversity, how he faces that adversity in the face after losing a game, and how he has responded as the Texas Longhorn head coach. And then we'll end the show with some Texas Longhorn talking points. We just finished watching the Texas A&M volleyball game. We'll briefly speak on that and just something that was seen in the stands, and we got a little something to say about that. And then just a little tease for you and some SEC Stolen Valor, but some personal accolades for some Texas Longhorn football players when it comes to postseason achievements and accolades, recognition, if you will. We're going to get into all of that in a jam-packed episode tonight. Again, I'm Tanner Carlson. That is Jake Jimerson. Jake, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. A little bit rough after that volleyball ending. Texas taking their first SEC loss. Spoiler alert. But still number one in the SEC on the volleyball side, and just ready for Saturday, ready to kind of wash the stink of that loss off of this football team.
Yeah, I'm with you, Jake. I think a lot of Texas fans and I think a lot of Texas football players are as well, because I think what the overall consensus has kind of been, or at least the talk, and I know you and we both educate ourselves. We both watch these shows. We watch national shows. We watch YouTube channels on college football. We watch film sessions that are posted, things of that nature. We try to be as educated and engaged as possible, especially following a loss and things like that. But the overall consensus was that Texas kind of got their ass beat. And upon further review, a lot of people are kind of like, okay, maybe it wasn't as bad as we initially thought on the first watching it live. And it always is that way. Even as a player, Jake, you can attest to this. When you go back and watch film, you're never as good as you thought you were, and you're never as bad as you thought you were either. It always kind of falls somewhere in the middle. And I think some people need to kind of realize that. But the national consensus, and everyone on Twitter, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever social media platform,
comments.
Whatever YouTube comments or YouTubers that you choose to watch, hopefully it's all in horns. It tends to be that Texas got spanked and Georgia dominated the game, and that's all that's being put out into the internet, into the ether sphere. Jake, I think that is great bulletin board material for this Texas Longhorn team. And I kind of hope that stays the consensus, at least to the public perception of how that game went, just to benefit these Texas Longhorns players in the locker room and, give them a little chip on the shoulder, give them a little bit of motivation, especially towards the end of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I hope if Texas and Georgia meet again, whether that be in Atlanta for an SEC title game or in the playoffs, I hope they make Georgia 10-point favorites. Just buy in, all in on them. That performance will totally repeat itself. I've seen also a lot of that wasn't Georgia's best game. Well, I disagree with that. Unless you could say the Clemson game. I do think there's an argument there, but other than that, their offense has looked not very good against any defenses with a pulse all year. Against Alabama, Beck showed that he turned over the ball. Texas took advantage of that. Texas's offense has not really shown that, not only this year, but under Sarkisian. And just kind of like you mentioned, after I watched the film, I was like, well, actually, the offensive line wasn't as bad as I thought. The right side of the offensive line was terrible, but like Kelvin Banks, after the game, I was like, wow, Kelvin Banks had a bad game. boy, was that a stupid take by me. It's on 60 pass rush attempts, he gave up 2 pressures, and the 1 sack wasn't even his fault. It was 4 seconds before he got sacked, and there was a huge pocket to step up into. And so that's why you go back and watch the games and you watch the film. And we may not be college football experts or played in the NFL, but you can still learn the game of football and be able to look at the film from a non-biased point of view and be able to break it down a little bit further.
No, you're exactly right, Jake. And, one thing going forward into this Texas Vandy preview I wanted to touch on was a press conference by Vanderbilt head coach Clark Lee. And on his players from Texas playing against Texas, he says, quote, anytime you're playing the flagship university of your home state, there's something personal about that. Not that he has brought it up personally to his Texas players, but he imagines as a former player or a coach himself that when you're from that state and you're playing someone who represents that state, it means a little bit more, especially if you didn't get offered to play there.
Yeah, and we saw that that's something that we saw happen a lot more in the Big 12, because you go against Baylor, you go against Texas Tech, you go against those minor, more minor programs from the same state, where some of those players weren't recruited by Texas. Because even when Texas goes against A&M may be little sister, but at the end of the day, they are battling for a lot of the same recruits. Right. Because A&M does recruit at a high level. They just typically don't play at a very high level.
Well, Anthony Hill was committed there, and then Sark pulled the old flipperoo. So one word in that quote from the Vandy head coach, the flagship university, Jake, the flagship university
we've known
resides
this
in Austin. And it's not anything that
it's known at a national level. The only place in the world that thinks otherwise is College Station.
Yeah.
And that's it.
You're right. It's the only place. Texas here, A&M there when it comes to just notoriety. There's a big gap. Yeah. I'm quoting a certain show, and I'm hoping people are catching the reference. So I did want to mention this, Jake. Steve Sarkisian, following adversity. This is an interesting tidbit, and you and I, we both kind of give that first season a mulligan for Sark. It really wasn't his team. He had one player that played on that team that was his player that he recruited, and that was Xavier Worthy. Ever heard of him? Coach Steve Sarkisian is 7-5 following a loss as the Texas head coach. He had a 6-game losing streak, folks. So really, those 5 losses that came within his 7-5 losing streak came after that second loss of that 5-7 season, lost continually in that 6-game streak, hasn't lost back-to-back games since then, and that was following the KU loss at home, lost to West Virginia, finally got off the snide on the final game of the season, beat Kansas State in that 2021 season, has yet to lose back-to-back games since.
Yeah, and we saw it last year. They lost OU. A lot of people thought, wow, this team's not ready, and then they won out, and OU fell off a cliff. And at the end of the day, this team has – it kind of annoys me almost how some of the Texas fans are like, well, now we get to see how Texas battles back from adversity under Steve Sarkisian. And we've seen them battle back from adversity, not only after a loss, but within games themselves, battle back from adversity. And even in the Georgia game, it was 23-0 at halftime. It was a 1-possession ball game with Georgia 3rd and 10 backed up on their own side of the field. And they were able to convert there, and that play kind of was the difference, because then they had the trick play the next play, and those 2 plays were kind of what ended up winning Georgia the game. Otherwise, Texas was going to get the ball back, likely in good field position, with all the momentum and a chance to tie the football game, which again is why the ass-kicking thing to me just makes no sense, because it was a 1-possession football game going into the fourth.
Yeah.
In the second half, going into the fourth quarter, as the third quarter ended. And so we've seen this team battle. So I don't really think they're going to go out Saturday and just lay an egg. Does that mean they're guaranteed going to win? No, that's not how football works. Just as we saw Vandy beat Alabama earlier this year. But I'm not worried about them coming out and letting a prior loss beat them. That will not be the reason they lose if they lose.
No, it'll be because Vanderbilt has a good game plan. They execute, and probably Texas doesn't play up to the standard in which they should be playing at. Steve Sarkisian, though, very good after following a loss, typically makes the adjustments, typically has had his team respond in the appropriate manner. So I'm not overly concerned with this team coming out and laying an egg and not being at least ready to play. If they're flat and they're just not pumped up, that would be the biggest surprise to me, than more so than them just not executing plays or something along those lines.
If anything, I think they'll be more fired up. I think they're going to come out with their hairs on fire, and that could be a bad thing if you have some undisciplined plays, but I don't worry about there being a lack of effort or a flat effort at all to start the game.
Well, let's get into some Vanderbilt stats. They are 94th in total offense, Jake. They are 46th in scoring, averaging 29.5 points per game. So 94th in total offense. Doesn't necessarily result in a ton of yards. It also doesn't result in a ton of efficiency plays. But what they do rank very high in is they are 11th in time of possession. And they have a recipe that is going to allow them to essentially stay in games. And what it is that they're safe and conservative. It's a recipe for keeping close games by staying ahead of the chains, taking time off the play clock before snapping the ball, allowing your team to keep the opposing team's offense off the field. And as long as they have possession, the other team likely can't score. They also don't turn the ball over very much. They lead the SEC in only 2 turnovers this season, and so they have a pretty good turnover margin as well. So they're very conservative, they're very safe, and that's not a bad style of football to play when you're Vanderbilt and you're just trying to put together a program, and they're a disciplined program. It obviously has earned them a ranking this week.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Vandy probably has one of the most efficient offenses in the country, because you look at those numbers and they don't blow you away. But what does blow you away is their red zone scoring, their third down efficiency, and the time they possess the ball. That is an incredibly efficient offense. And that is exactly how a school like Vanderbilt wants to play when they're out talented in a lot of the matchups in conference. And they have found that, because we've seen them lose to a Georgia State. That tells you that they're not just this incredibly talented team. Now, Pavia is very talented and he has a ton of grit and moxie, and we'll get more into him. I think we both have a lot of respect for him at the quarterback position. I know Sarkisian does as well. He mentioned it a lot in his presser, but that's what really sticks out to me about this Vanderbilt team is they don't really have that good of the defensive side of the ball is lacking, but the offensive side of the ball has been, maybe we can dive into some of those advanced efficiency metrics that they do on offenses. I imagine Vandy has to be one of the highest in the country at that, because they have long drives, they don't turn it over, they convert third downs, and when they get in scoring position, they score touchdowns. And that's how you win football games at the end of the day, because it doesn't matter if you put up 500 yards, but you kick 10 field goals. Just look at the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Jake, defensively, you spoke on it. They allow 129 rushing yards per game. That's good for 44th in the nation, while giving up 245 passing yards per game. That's 94th in the nation. This defense is susceptible to, I hate to call it this because it's not a get-right game for Texas by any means. This is not a get-right game. Maybe in the past it would have been. But for the offense to find a little bit of a rhythm following a tough, not so much in the rushing game, but at least in the passing game with Quinn Ewers against an Oklahoma defense, very stingy, very difficult, disguise their defense well, very good scheme that they play, and then also a very good Georgia defense. This is a defense that should allow Quinn Ewers a little bit more freedom to make better plays, bigger plays, work on his confidence, and then also for the running backs to get them onto the field, making good runs, good plays, and just getting this offense more in a rhythm. Again, not a get-right game, but just kind of a confidence-boosting game in terms of statistics, efficiency, moving the ball down the field.
I think this is a get-right game for Quinn Ewers. I don't think it is for the Longhorn team, but this has to be for Quinn Ewers. This Vanderbilt defense is not world beaters. You know, they didn't beat Alabama because of their defense. They did have that pick 6 early on the ball that got tipped up, went way up in the air. That's one of 8 turnovers that Vanderbilt has forced this year. They do not force a bunch of turnovers. They give up points. I mean, Georgia State, I think, scored 36 on them.
Yeah.
Their defense is not the side of the ball that is winning them games. It's their offense that's winning them games. And so I expect the offense to come out and they should be able to do whatever they want. They should be able to run the ball. I'm not saying they will, but they should be able to run the ball and have a lot of success in the running game. And if Quinn Ewers is looking terrible, this is why we've talked about he has a shorter leash now, because if he's not looking good against Vanderbilt, it's not going to be pretty in College Station. As much as I've talked smack on them, they are a very capable football team. And if Quinn Ewers is playing terrible football, they're not going to win in College Station. They're not going to win in Fayetteville, Arkansas. They're not going to win some of these games that are coming up here shortly on the schedule. And so this is a game where I want to see Quinn come out, and I want to see him not only be efficient, I want to see him make throws down the field. I mean, when is the last time we've seen him complete a ball that was 20 yards in the air? 20 plus yards in the air. I can't remember.
Yeah, it's been a while. Vanderbilt's defense gives up about 26 points per game. Texas is averaging well into the 30s. This should be a game, again, we've mentioned it, where the offense should pick up a rhythm and they should look like a complete team in this game. Now, if the defense gives up a little bit, Jake, I probably won't be all that upset if the defense is going to allow a couple of decent drives, maybe even a couple scoring drives. I don't think this defense is going to completely shut out Vanderbilt. Now, with that being said, Texas's defense hasn't really allowed that at all. I'm not very concerned on the defensive side of the ball, even if Vanderbilt does manage to move the ball down the field a little bit and have a little bit more, they look a little bit more put together, even than, say, a Georgia team. I think they have a better offense than Georgia, maybe, or at least a better quarterback. A quarterback playing better.
At least a better college offense, a better college quarterback. Beck is obviously a much better pro prospect. There's a difference between the two things. But yeah, I mean, I expect Vanderbilt to actually give this Texas defense some problems early because the edges are going to have to play much more disciplined than they've had to play. This is almost like playing a spread Naval Academy type team. I mean, it really is, because they use a lot of option. They use a lot of misdirection. They're going to try to punish your edges and the edges. And it's going to be interesting to see how Colin Simmons plays in this game. Someone that Texas has been putting on the field more and more, a true freshman. That's going to be a very different look. So how are these edges going to play? And this may be a game where you see a lot of Ethan Burke. You see a lot of Barron Sorrell, who, I mean, we see a lot of anyways. He's been excellent this year. And you even see like a Justice Finkley out there a little bit more. So I'm going to be very curious to see the edge play in this game, because that Vanderbilt offensive line, by the way, if you look across the line, they're all 4th to 6th year seniors. It is a very experienced group. And I think the smallest offensive lineman is 320 pounds. So they are big and experienced up front.
Well, and that also goes to my next point that I've made, Jake. They don't commit a lot of penalties. They're 36th in the country in penalties committed per game, with only 5.5 penalties. Now, that goes for the offense and the defense, so that might not even be really coming from the offensive side of the ball very much. With that experienced offensive line, you get a very disciplined offense that's not going to shoot themselves in the foot. Say on a 2nd and 5, you get it 4 yards to make it 3rd and 1, but coming back, holding penalty. Now you're setting yourself up for a 3rd and 10 instead. They stay ahead of the chains. They take their time. They move the ball down the field. They use the running game as their primary objective whenever they're establishing their offense of moving the ball down the field to make 1st down, 2nd and 5, to make 2nd down, 3rd and 1. Converting 3rd down, or even going forward on 4th if they get stopped. This isn't a perfect team by any means. They're just safe and conservative, and they do all the right things to make them a team that's not really capable of getting blown out, really.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like to look at this Vandy Alabama box score because that's the game you got to look at, right? That's their biggest win of the season, probably their biggest win in program history. You look at it, penalties. Alabama had 6 for 57. Vanderbilt had 3 for 20. Obviously, we talked about the time of possession earlier in the week, 42 minutes to 18 minutes. The total yardage in this game was pretty close, 418 for Vandy, 394 for Alabama. But how about this? 26 first downs for Vanderbilt compared to only 17 for Alabama with similar yardage amounts. In third down efficiency, Bama was 3 of 6 because they either scored on big plays or didn't do anything. And then Vanderbilt was 12 of 18 on third downs.
They're not afraid of third down. They're not afraid of third down. They
and
don't,
it's because it's always third and short.
Yep. And that's where they keep it. Jake, they're really not even all that explosive on the outside. Their wide receiver threats, very minimal. Leading wide receiver, Junior Sherrill, he has 12 receptions, 215 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It's really their tight end, who's their number 1 target for Diego Pavia, 33 receptions. That's nearly almost triple of what their leading wide receiver has, 463 yards and 2 touchdowns. Again, most of this is through the ground game in terms of picking up yardage and making it the moving down the field, nickeling and diming it with the running game. Running back Cedric Alexander averaging 4 yards per carry. AJ Newberry averaging 4.9 yards per carry. Very good compliments to what Pavia does. Pavia, again, also averaging about 4 yards per carry. And they run kind of an option running game, as you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah. And that's why, to me, it's going to be all about linebackers and edges in this game. I expect the defensive tackles to mostly be able to stalemate, at the line of scrimmage. But the discipline of the linebackers have struggled at times with just shooting gaps too quickly and shooting the wrong gap. They cannot do that in this game. They're going to have to be ready for all the misdirection that Vanderbilt's going to throw at you. And so that's why I am very curious to see how this defense does, because if they play well in this game, I'm going to be saying some wild things on Saturday after this game about how good I think this defense is, because at that point they will have showed it against a Georgia who runs kind of more of a pro type scheme almost, and then showed it against a Vanderbilt who runs a very unique option style offense. And so kind of playing the two wide varieties that you see in college football. That's why I'm so excited to see how this defense plays, because I do think they're going to have to. I think Vanderbilt's going to have success early, and the defense is going to have to adjust and kind of get used to playing this, because there's only so much the scout team can do to simulate this type of offense when you don't run this type of offense with your program or anything even close to it.
Well, and also Texas has like 2 available running backs to use currently in practice, and that has to go to the starting lineup. That has to go to the ones. You don't really get a scout team to go against that. So they're probably just throwing in their best athletes to kind of put guys back there to maybe run a similar type style
I'm sure
offense.
Niblett sees a lot of running back play in practice.
Yeah. And let's be real. A lot of these guys were 2-way players in high school. They played on the offensive side of the ball. You got corners and you got, safeties that played quarterback or running back in high school, and also, doing a dual threat thing. So it's not like they have no experience there. But Jake, I thought I had to sneeze there for a second. It's kind of still sitting right on the tip of my nose for just a moment. If y'all can't tell, my allergies are acting up. If you can't tell in my voice, but do you think that the run defense will show anything of concern that maybe I have expressed throughout this season, say from the Georgia game? Worst case scenario, what do you think happens with this running game? Run defense, they just can't stop anything?
I'm not that worried. The defense has always adjusted. All the running success has come come on early drives, and then Texas adjusts, and then they shut it down. You look at that Mississippi State game. If you take out that first drive, I believe and this was several weeks back, so I might not be exactly right, but this will be close. I believe if you take out that first drive, they averaged about 2.9 yards per carry. They were shut down after that first drive. If you look at the Georgia game, they were averaging about 6 or 7 yards per carry with the running backs at halftime. They ended up averaging just, around, I think, close to 5 in the 4.6, I think. And so that dropped dramatically. And that was when Georgia started trying to run the ball more. As soon as they started trying to run the ball more, they didn't find as much success running the football. Where I'm concerned is kind of what I've been talking about this whole episode is this is a completely different style of offense. What's really given Texas some issues early in games with their run defense is the inside zone scheme. And it's because linebackers are shooting the gaps too fast, incorrectly, and then it causes a big run to burst out. But, against Michigan, the two big runs that they had were because of Benda and then Hill shooting the wrong gap too early. And that's
over pursuit.
That can be punished with this option offense, but it's also going to be a lot on the edges. You can't allow the quarterback to hurt you. And I think the edges are going to be probably trying to use their speed and mind games to, kind of make it look like they're going inside, try to get Pavia to take it, and then wrap him up for a loss. So I'm very curious to see how the edges play in space. And then if the linebackers can play disciplined and have to be a little bit patient. You have to be a little bit patient against this type of offense.
Jake, I did want to mention something on the offensive line. Jake Majors is a finalist and was named a finalist this week for the Campbell Trophy, college football's premier scholar athlete. This is a really cool award. It's a great recognition, and Jake Majors probably a player that goes under the radar and will find his final kind of outlook on a lot of Texas fans will probably be, we didn't appreciate this guy enough while he was here.
Yeah, this is, and this is kind of why, if you go back all the way to the start of the year, we talked about when could Texas win a national title? Could it be this year? This year is one of those window years where they have the ability to, but, yet to be seen. Next year, we both agreed we didn't think that was a possibility next year. And part of the reason why is the turnover on the offensive line, and Jake Majors is the quarterback of that offensive line. Kelvin Banks is the star player. Jake Majors is the quarterback. He has as Steve Sarkisian says, he has a PhD in this offense. He makes just as many calls, if not more, than Quinn at the line. He's making a lot of pre-snap reads as well. And I'm sure he was helping Arch Manning a ton in those first starts that he had. And not only that, he's pretty damn good in the run block and pass blocking. He was good against Georgia. He was not one of that left side of the line, Hayden Connor included, were not really the issue in that game. It was Campbell and Williams who really, really struggled. And the running backs, by the way, there's been a huge drop off in the blocking ability of the running backs with CJ Baxter out. And that was apparent last week. But Jake Majors is a guy that a lot of people have tried to get rid of him in a way of being like, who could compete this year at center for Jake Major's spot? I've heard that every single offseason he's been a starter, and he's been a very good, if not great, Texas Longhorn offensive lineman, and he's going to have a chance to play at the next level. Whether he'll have success there, I don't know, but I think the undersized center thing is overplayed. Look at Jason Kelsey. And we're going to miss him next year, and it's going to be noticeable, I think. Early on next year, you're going to be like, wow, Jake Majors was actually pretty good. And of course, it'll be after he's gone when people notice that.
Right. Well, Jake, let's talk just real briefly. Number 7, Texas volleyball falls to Texas A&M. They lose in 5 sets, 3-2. First loss to Texas A&M since 2010. It's been 14 years since this has happened. Jake, it was a great game. You and I, we were both watching it before we jumped on and decided to record this episode for Thursday. It was a great game by Reagan Rutherford. Brenda Skinner had 22 kills. It wasn't for a lack of trying or really screw-ups. Texas A&M played a great game. Student section was great. I think the swim team was there, or at least they looked like the swim team. A whole front 3 rows of male students wearing Speedos on the front row. That's always fun. Painted bodies, you got the Texas guys out there as well. But there was one fan in the stands that wearing a maroon shirt, horns sawed off. That's not abnormal. We see that all the time, especially like you're at least playing in this game and you're at least playing against Texas. That's actually valid to wear. But what was said on the shirt was something a little unique to me. It said, "Welcome to the SEC 30-15. Aggie's gonna Aggie."
I said something before this show that I don't think I can say on the show, unfortunately, about what that guy probably does at home. But if anyone can try to draw some lines from there, but that is the biggest loser. I mean, and actually, I saw an Aggie fan on Twitter earlier today that was getting mad at OU and Texas fans, going, "If you don't like the SEC, you shouldn't have joined." Because some like Sooner fan was like, "I don't really care that Georgia beat Texas. Like, I don't root for other SEC teams." And an Aggie fan said that, and it was like, do you just like? I just don't get that mindset. I love all the Georgia fans invading our comments after the game because they were too scared to before, because they probably thought they were going to lose. I love all the hate that comes our way. I hope everyone hates Texas, because I hate all of you. I hate the entire SEC. I want to beat the living crap out of every single one of those teams in every single sport. I don't care. Who wins games. I may like want A&M to lose or OU to lose certain games. But at the end of the day, it's not something I'm going to get overly excited for or cheer for at the end of the day.
Perfect example. I'm rooting for Texas A&M to beat LSU because it benefits Texas at the end of the day to improve Texas's odds of getting to an SEC championship, because we don't have the luxury of facing LSU ourselves to do it. So yeah, we are relying a little bit on little sister to get the job done for us. Also, a Tennessee situation, or I was rooting for Alabama in that situation. I think Georgia has a decent game.
I think Georgia plays Tennessee. The only thing, I think, if A&M beats LSU, which since we're relying on them, they'll probably lose. If that happens, I think Texas then controls their own destiny again for the SEC title game. I'm not 100% sure on that. We'll have to double check, but I believe that is the case.
Discount double check. All right, and then real quick, the SEC Stolen Valor of the day goes to the Paul Feinbaum Show. They listed their SEC legends for 2024, and guess who were on that list? Barry Switzer and Vince Young made the SEC legends list. SEC guys, come on, this is lowballing it even for you, Southeastern Conference. Barry Switzer never coached for an SEC team, and Vince Young never had the SEC logo on his jersey. It was always the Big 12 and will always be the Big 12. This is one of the primary reasons I will never wear a shirt like that A&M fan was wearing. I'll never wear a coattail shirt for rooting for a conference. Screw your conference. I hate your conference. I'm just in it because my team is in it, and I have to cover it because I have to cover my team. I don't care about the SEC, all right? Barry Switzer and Vince Young should not be on this list. This is not okay to have. I'm not riding the coattails of Georgia and Alabama because, we can't do it, so we're losers. We might as well ride the coattails of some winners. That's not how we do it here at Texas. That's not how it's done, I don't believe, in Oklahoma. It's not going to happen. And so, I don't know. This is just one thing of many things of why I've never really liked the SEC, is because they do things like this to boost themselves up as much as they possibly can.
Well, and my whole thing is, it's Alabama and Georgia fans seem to not really like anyone else in the SEC. So the only fan bases that participate in this coattail riding,
LSU does a good job.
LSU does too. And LSU is one of those elite programs. They have more off years than Alabama and Georgia, but that is a good point. LSU would be up there too. Maybe even an Auburn, though they've been down for a little bit now. But all these other programs who haven't won a national title anytime recently, they pump their chest with the SEC more than anything. And it's always about what the other teams are doing, because they're never doing anything. They're playing in the Cheez-It Bowl. every
Right.
year and
Yeah.
pumping their chest about Bama winning a national title. I will never be like that. If Texas playing in the Cheez-It Bowl, I'm just going to be pissed off that Texas didn't have a good year. I'm
Right.
not going to care that Georgia wins the national championship. I'm not going to care that Bama wins the national championship. And back to the Stolen Valor thing, I don't like it. Vince Young, I don't even think he played against an SEC team his whole career. I mean, it's just silly. I'm sure Switzer did at some point, but it's just silly. I don't get it.
Ridiculous.
If I was Vince Young, I'd be like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah. I'd say
I'm
take
already
me off
been
the
honored
list.
in Big 12 with Texas and all that stuff. Why is this a thing?
Yeah, take me off the list. All right, Jake. Well, with that all being said, tomorrow's episode, we are going to come out with predictions. We're going to predict the Texas Vandy game. And this is a slate full of great Saturday games. And we have a great Friday night game that we're going to get into as well. Big implications on the 12-team playoff coming up following Friday's episode and our immediate reaction show. Hopefully we've got a little bit better idea as to kind of where the 12-team playoff is going to fall each and every single week. And then we're going into the bye week. Jake, we're going to give a great preview for the bye week. A lot of content ready for the bye week. I'm already excited to get into a lot of the playoff talk that we've got planned going on. But for tomorrow's episode, we're going to look at Saturday's slate of games. We're going to predict and talk about each and every single one of them, including the Texas Vandy game. So stay tuned each and every single day, Tuesday through Friday. These episodes release at noon. And then on Saturdays, we let the football dictate our timing, and we will give an immediate reaction to the Texas Longhorn game on Saturday evening. Again, like, share, subscribe, all things Texas Longhorns for your daily fix of Texas Longhorns right here on All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake Jimerson. And as always, welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports. All in